We're so excited that you're here with us tonight. Before we get started, please take a moment to scan the QR code on your table. Look at us, really fancy. Okay, this will give you access to tonight's agenda, reminders, and upcoming sessions. You can also always find the full master schedule. Where is it? Parent guide. Parent guide. Yes, please use your parent guide.
They came up good.
Okay, now it's my honor to introduce our speaker for tonight. This is Dawn Lizzie. She's a biomedical engineer, an entrepreneur, and an FDA Entrepreneur in Residence alum who founded Empirical Technologies and co-leads Intuitive Biotechnologies. She also founded the NeuroAlly Family Fund to support neurodivergent families. Please join me in welcoming Dawn Lizzie.
How's everybody doing tonight? I know you're about this, so you can just thumbs up, shake. Okay, good. All right, before I get started, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I think that I'm learning more and more about the Parents Challenge Group, and I think it is an amazing resource that El Paso County has. And I'm so glad to see you guys here tonight. Before I go into my pages of notes, which will include my family story, lessons that I've learned, and then tools that I've become aware of, I do want to expand on the last part that she had talked about. I had started NeuroAlly Family Fund at the end of 2023. It started as the Ascent Scholarship. It's a DBA into NeuroAlly Family Fund. And the whole point of the organization, which I'm going to go into how we got there, but the whole point is to be a financial bridge to get access to tools that exist for families with neurodivergence. That was a lot. Financial bridge for families to get access to tools that exist that are not covered by insurance. Okay? So I'm going to talk about some of those things. And it was actually my husband who said, go do this, because the community needs it. And he said a few things like that in the past. Anyway, so as a plug, and we'll be here afterwards, we have Solstice Chiropractic. They were with me on Sunday. We had our first awareness day where I brought together 10 service providers who do different things to help folks with neurodivergence, to help lower your stress level in your life. And not therapists, but other things. So we have Solstice Chiropractic, which, by the way, my youngest son uses for his ADHD that he doesn't think he has, his migraines and his anxiety, and it has been game-changing, so I can't plug them enough. And so they're here to talk with anyone who's interested. And then over on the table on the left is a flyer about NeuroAlly Family Fund, my card. So if anyone wants to do a follow-up, man, I need to pick your brain or whatever, I am here for you, because the whole point of NeuroAlly is to build community. Because when I was going through my journey, I felt like I was the only person in the ocean, and I was navigating a whole bunch of BS, and I want to make sure that everyone else that is navigating this does not feel alone. And as I tell people, it is hard being an adult. Who agrees with me? It is, yes, it is hard adulting. It is hard being married. Who agrees? And that is work every day, right? It is hard being married with kids. Who agrees? It is undefined, we'll say, and unique to every person's opportunity in life. It is hard to be an adult married with kids who are neurospicy. So if we can do things to lower our stress level, that we enjoy sitting at the dinner table, that we enjoy a Saturday, that we have tools to get past this, what I call the spins. Who knows what the spins are? Does anyone know this? Yes. Oh, yeah. So that is the goal of NeuroAlly. So on the table on the left is my business card for NeuroAlly, a flyer about NeuroAlly, and then some of the other organizations that showed up at the awareness fair this past Sunday. Equine therapy, parent coaching, estate planning. If you have a child who's going to need care for the rest of that child's life, how to start thinking about it now so that that stress is not being carried around with you and you have a plan. Trail community that is a community with guardrails for adults with different levels of neurodivergence that may not want to live with their mom and dad for the rest of their lives, but might need a community with some guardrails. So there's some really great resources over there, okay? Please help yourself. All right. Thank you. So in this audience tonight, you showed up because neurodivergence was the topic of conversation. How many of you know that you are dealing with someone in your immediate family that is neurodivergent? Or let's start with that. How many of you know and are dealing immediately? Okay. How many of you suspect? Okay. Welcome to the club, folks. Welcome to the club. All right. So, my name is Dawn Lissy. I'm a biomedical engineer. Yes, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have started and sold 2 companies, and I have 1 more that I'm working on. And then I do this nonprofit, and then I do some other things. How can she do all that, she said, they say. Because ADHD is my superpower. The funny part is that I didn't really know that ADHD was my superpower until about 4 or 5 years ago. I am a band geek. I am a science nerd. I am the oldest of 3 girls who basically raised my sisters. I'm going to share some personal information. I am the daughter of an alcoholic narcissist. This comes into play with some context and perspective. And I was never going to get married. And then many bad relationships later, I met Chris, and he wore me down, and we got married, and we did not have children I was 32, and then my second one, I was geriatric, which, by the way, I want to punch whoever came up with geriatric. I have opinions. I'm giving you some of this background so that you understand my lens and my deck of cards, and that's what I call it. Everybody has their own deck of cards. I'm not walking in your shoes. You're not walking in my shoes. I am trying every day to give everyone around me compassion without understanding, and that's all we can ask of each other, right? Other people call it being kind. Compassion without understanding. That's what I call it. Chris is quirky. He was quirky. That's, but I didn't know any different because I grew up with kind of quirky. And then we had a son who was just like my husband. His name is Ryan. He is now 20 years old. And it wasn't until some friends would come and stay and they'd watch our lives and then they'd go, there's something like weird here, right? And I was like, no, what? And they're like, other people don't deal with the level of things that you're dealing with. By the way, I have a second son. His name is Tyler. He is going to be 18 in a month, and he's 6'4", and he knows everything. He also is fabulous on the fabulous scale between Freddie and Elton. Okay? All right. Just so that we, And Ryan was the train autistic. Does everybody know what I mean by that? Loves trains, builds trains, trains. We have to do all the things trains. He could recite everything about Egypt. Again, quirky kid. When he was 9, we did a shadow day at a new potential school because we were moving from out in Black Forest where we had cows as our neighbors down into the city because I was like, our kids need to have friends, not cows. And so we were doing shadow days. And what we didn't understand is that by the time he was 9, we were already doing accommodations without recognizing that there were accommodations, right? If he gets anxious in class, he's allowed to go get a drink of water to reset himself. I took him to the circus. Oh boy, that was a mistake. Now, I took him to the circus and that was too much. But he can play video games out the wazoo with all the zing, zang, bang, ding, movement, but that doesn't bother him. These are things I started to pick up in my engineering solve problems mind. And so at the shadow day, he didn't tell anybody, but he got up and he got a drink of water, and that freaked all of them out. Who's the 3rd grader, the 9-year-old, that's getting up and just leaving classroom? We don't do that. Yeah, well, he marches to a different drummer. So, we got called into the school, into the principal's office. We got asked to speak to the school therapist. And she talked to Ryan, and she came back and she said, do you know that your kid is the sweetest, kindest, funniest, super intelligent kid I've met in a long time. I'm like, thank you. He's twice exceptional. I'm sorry, what? He's twice exceptional. That's the first time I ever heard that. How many people are familiar with twice exceptional? Okay, twice exceptional. Yeah, twice exceptional. So I stood in the parking lot and I Googled twice exceptional, and it had a chart of strengths and challenges, and I started laughing. And my husband, Chris, looks at me and goes, why are you laughing? I said, well, heck, if they had a picture of you and Ryan here, they'd have a complete definition. So then we got referred to a specialist to do testing. And little did I know that the testing that I landed with, and by the way, I'm a big believer in manifestors. I am a manifesting queen. If you don't know what that means, I'll talk to you later. We landed with the best person to test my kids, actually. And that test plan not only came with a diagnosis, but it also came with a plan for parents. Hey, here are some tools that you can use. And then here's the language you can take to the school and get a 504. And I was like, okay. So I did all that because I solved problems. And we got accommodations and we worked through it. And then we got Tyler tested. And she said, your 7-year-old has the single highest IQ of any individual I've tested in 25 years. And I was like, great, at 7. And when she read Brian's diagnosis, which is autism, by the way, that was the year that it went from Asperger's to autism, so it was a big transition year for everybody. Autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, throw in, boy, he's a boy, and all of that. And I started crying, and my husband looks at me and he says, why are you crying? And I was like, because, and I'm sitting here going, okay, how do I say this? No parent wants to hear that their kid is going to have more challenges than life, which is already hard enough. And he's like, but Ryan's just like me. I know. And he said, it'll be okay. And I said, you've had me for the past 10 years translating. By the way, it now occurred to me that my husband did not talk to an individual unless I vetted them for him at all. Now he won't shut up. But those are things that I was like, okay. And I looked at my husband and I said, it's going to be harder to raise Tyler to not be a bleep than it is going to be to raise Ryan to have tools to survive in a neurotypical world. Because we live in an unfair world, and that's just how it is. Couple things about Ryan. Ryan has object permanence at a whole nother level. For instance, in 2019, I weighed this weight. After 2019, I gained 10 pounds a year until I gained 50 pounds. And I have a bad spine. So for the past year and a half, I have been working on losing weight. I have lost 60 pounds. And thank you. And that's for my spine because I have for being a biomedical engineer who designed spinal implants and tested them, I am the poster child for all the things that could go wrong in your spine at one level.
Wow.
Where was I going with that? See, this is my squirrel. Thank you. So I'm in the kitchen giving myself my shot, and Ryan's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing my shot for weight loss. And he's like, and this is like a month ago. I said, what are you doing that for? Have you not noticed that your mom's lost like 60 pounds in the past year? He's like, nah. Okay. Your dad's lost 70 pounds in the past year. Have you noticed that? He's like, no. Okay, Ryan, here's the deal. If I say to you, I know you don't pay attention to stuff, this is going to be my example. If you go around the corner for Ryan, you don't exist anymore. Not that he doesn't love you, not that you don't matter to him. You just don't matter anymore in that moment, and that's just his reality. I learned my $50 word. Who's heard of perseveration? Yes. For those of you who don't know what perseveration means, you heard the expression, we're going to beat it until it's glue? Beat the horse until it turns into glue? That's the other phrase. Someone who has perseveration is going to focus on something until it's solved for them. It doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how you beg, bribe, steal, do whatever, until they solve that problem for themselves, you are all stuck in that paradigm until that paradigm is done. Case in point, I mentioned that we were moving, so our house was up for sale. We needed to get out of the house. I had a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. Ryan wanted to spend that day, at that moment, to tie his shoes, which he did not master yet. We were not going anywhere until that boy tied his shoes. And if I tied his shoes, we had what I call the spins, or a meltdown, which, by the way, is the second stage of perseveration, which means now you have to deregulate your kid because he's got the spins, and then you have to get them past the perseveration. Not very fun. So, if your kiddo is perseverating about something, that means they are hyper-focused. By the way, fast forward 20 years, these are the people that solve the software problems and solve the technology problems and hyper-focus on a problem that they have an interest in until it's solved. That's how we know that we've always had people with autism, because that's always existed. I'm going to tangent again, and I may need a squirrel remind, so I'm just going to say that. How many people have heard the phrase that the incidence of neurodivergence, and specifically autism, is on the rise? And that's how many people have heard this? Okay. If you're not aware, there's an article that was just published, I think like 2 weeks ago, in the New York Times, where the scientist who led the committee to move Asperger's to autism and redefine this 11 years ago basically said, I'm responsible for this, and here's why the surge is happening. The reality is that neurodivergent folks have always existed. Our awareness is just now increasing. Our tools are just now increasing. By the way, I mentioned I'm an engineer and a band geek. You know what all those people are? Not all. A lot of those people. Neurodivergent. How many people know that there are 8 different medical, I hate calling it diagnoses, and by the way, I'm OCD, although I call it OC because it's a way of life, not a disorder. That's what I say. How many people know that there are 8 brain ways of thinking that fall under neurodivergence? There are 8. I don't know them all. I can tell you, I can't tell you all the names, but it's autism, dyslexia, ADHD, sensory. There's one with numbers. There's one with sounds. These are all under the neurodivergence umbrella. And that's why we're Neuro Ally Family Fund, because we're not going to just focus on autism or ADHD. And by the way, there's a crisscross applesauce. I remember when Ryan was like 13 years old, and I was like, dude, I don't even know what the situation was. Dude, I don't know if this happened because of your autism, your ADHD, that you're a teenage boy, or yes. And trying to parent, that is like, whoo, boy. So I always tell, like, when I go meet with the school, I always said, listen, neurotypical kiddos, when you have a situation in a puzzle, and you have all the puzzle pieces, when you hit that situation, you can correlate for them and teach them that similar situations, this is how you would act or react. Not for Ryan. Every single situation is unique. There's no carryover. There's no crossover. There is no correlation or any of it. So and I told him, my crystal ball is broken, dude. And so trying to figure this out. By the way, I mentioned my husband. Oh, I forgot. So after testing my kids, my husband says, I want to be tested. I'm like, dude, we know the answer. And he's like, I want my kid to know that you can have a family, you can have a life, we built a business together, and you can have any deck of cards, and what you create for yourself is on you. And this is how I can show them that. And I was like, damn, that's the most empathetic thing you've ever said. Okay, we'll scrape together $5,000, because that's what it costs to do the testing that I got, and had my husband tested, and lo and behold, same deck of cards. Okay. All right. So that is perseveration, puzzle pieces. Okay, I talked about all those things. So I created a business because I came home from my engineering job that I just found out had gotten bought by a company that I co-opted for in my undergraduate career, and I didn't want to work for them. I had already done that, and I don't want to do that. So I came home to my new husband in my just recently purchased house after getting my husband into college and went, I gotta get a new job. And he said, all I do is listen to you complain that you can't find someone who can do this mechanical testing, go write a business plan, start a business, go fill this need. So I did. And I did everything from cleaning the toilets to selling to paying the bills to all of it. About 3 years in, I looked at him and said, you either gotta come help me or I gotta hire 3 people. And so Chris and I, we met working together. We continued to work together. We sold our business in 2022. And Chris looked at me and said, we know these tools that we found work. By the way, my kid went on to be class president. He was homecoming king. He worked part-time at ACE every weekend through high school. He drove to school, God help me, every day. We live up in Northgate. He went to CSS. His guardian angels are working overtime every day that kid gets in the car. And he got accepted into college. So my husband said, these tools work. We know that none of them are covered by insurance. Go create an organization to help these families. Okay? So that's how that all ties in. And by the way, I'm just, as a sidebar, I am not a licensed therapist in any way, shape, or form, but what I am going to say is, I told you guys that my mom was a narcissist. That was actually by a medical professional. We thought that my husband was a narcissist. Turned out that his father was a narcissist. So when you have an autistic kid living with a narcissist, they mimic the behaviors and the patterns that they see. We know that my husband's not a narcissist because he's actually grown. And that's one of the traits of unfortunately broken people who become narcissists. Usually stay in their spot. But the thing that I love about Chris is that he's always wanted to grow and improve, and like he's parenting tonight, so those are all good things. But it's his and my partnership that got us to where we're at today and how I'm here talking to you guys. Okay. The second thing, so then Ryan hit puberty. By the way, for those of you who have kiddos that have not hit puberty, you can find a stride and you can feel like you figured it all out and that you've juggled all the pieces and you tried the things and you know what's going to work and you got a pattern and all this stuff. And then puberty and hormones, and guess what? Game off. So, in my case, Ryan didn't understand healthy boundaries. He struggled with things like he loved to read about history. And he happened to get into World War II, so he had a lot of questions about Hitler and the Nazis and all of that. And so he thought that the Jewish girl at school was the best person to go talk to about this. Those kinds of opportunities. I went from getting a phone call once a month to getting a phone call once a week to getting a phone call every day to getting the, okay, we gotta do this. By the way, kiddos and autism is a spectrum. By the way, no kiddo is the same. ADHD is a spectrum. And we all tap dance on all of it in some way, shape, or form. How I try to convey to my neurotypical friends, Asperger's autism, is really struggling with stressful situations and navigating. Ryan picks up patterns and habits. So for instance, every morning, because I taught him this, he looks me in the eye and said, Mom, how did you sleep? That's his, he has literally, I can see his brain go through what are the appropriate things that I need to say and do to have a relationship with my mom? And he will develop habits and patterns. So you gotta find what works. So I got the phone calls, and I was basically told he has hit the last straw. So I did an intervention, and he resided in a permanent facility for 5 months in Utah. And this is from October of 2019 to February 28th of 2020. So 17 days before the world shut down. Mama Bear was gonna go get him if the world hadn't shut, if he was still there. But You know, it was interesting because they said, like, they have therapy dogs there. Within 3 days, he wasn't allowed to go near the therapy dogs because he got in their personal space so much. So healthy boundaries was Ryan's thing. We really had to have a high level of intervention. And as a mom, I was really scared that this 14-year-old boy who really had the mental executive functioning of maybe an 8 or 9-year-old and a emotional relationship of maybe a 10-year-old was hugging little girls because that's who he related to. But when you're in a young man's body hugging little girls, and this was, by the way, when Me Too came out and was like full blown. So I was in crisis mode that my kid was going to land in jail, and our society didn't understand enough about what all this meant. So I made that decision, and it was interesting that, like I said, within 3 days, he wasn't allowed near the therapy dogs. So after he finished that program, they said, hey, have you heard of this group called Equinox in Denver? And Equinox is a full family service provider for, and they don't call it autism or neurodivergence, just for where you struggle. And actually Mary, who ran Equinox, said, you're like the only family who knows your kiddo is autistic and ADHD coming into the program. This is, like, everybody else is like just trying to find a way. But the really great thing about Equinox, and by the way, Equinox closed last year, but the providers, like, so the parent coach group over there, Tim was our parent coach. We had parent coaching, we had a parent mentor group, we had a support group. My youngest kid had a support group for siblings of neurodivergent kiddos, because those siblings always feel like they don't have the same level of attention. That may or may not be true, because we as parents know that you're always going to do this, but the perception becomes reality. And so having a support group for the kiddos, and by the way, in other parts of the country, there are groups that created sib shops for the siblings of neurodivergent kids to have support, so just FYI. And my youngest son is working on that as a project to create a sib shop here. We'll see if that happens, but that's one of his things, because he feels very strongly about that. And Equinox also, so it had parent support, little sibling support, and then Ryan got climbing. You want to talk about a way that you have to learn how to communicate with someone you may or may not know that you have to trust? Try climbing up a wall and having to communicate with a belayer. And by the way, you can say whatever is coming, what goes through your brain, which would probably get you in trouble in other places. But there are coaches there and mentors that are like, okay, so this is why we don't say those things. Because this is, this is important. So, and they got the wiggles out by climbing. And Ryan has climbed up golden cliffs and all these things. So Equinox, unfortunately, no longer exists, but they've broken up, and so parent coaching is one. And by the way, Tim is going to be creating a group parent coaching curriculum. He's in the process of creating it. So I think it'll be like 10 parents that can be part of this group. And I will tell you, that's one of the biggest things of, again, finding out I'm not by myself. It was really huge. Okay, any questions about anything that I've said so far? Okay, lessons I've learned. Drop the baton. I wish someone would have told me this when my kiddo was 9. If you're deregulated, does everybody know what that means? When you're deregulated, yes? Okay. If you as the parent are deregulated, that is the absolute not time to interact with your kid, whether they're deregulated or if they're calm. So if you're deregulated, hand your baton off to someone else. And if it has to be the dog for 10 minutes and you go give yourself a timeout, that's what you do. Because the minute you're deregulated, whether your kid was calm, you will make them deregulated within 3 minutes flat. And now you gotta calm yourself down, and then you gotta figure out how to calm your kid down. So drop the baton. So if you remember anything about tonight, drop the baton. I'm gonna tell you, that's been the game changer. I give myself timeouts. Because if I can't think calmly, my kid's not gonna. And my kid's gonna remember me being upset. Okay. Find what works for your kid. By the way, what worked yesterday is not gonna work tomorrow. So you just have to be willing to be flexible with your kid and figure out what their habits and patterns are. So for my kids, the uber smart ones who want to know everything, living in Black Forest, if we were going to go do our Saturday errands, guess what I had to start with? Okay, so first we're going to do this, and that's going to take approximately this long to get to, and we should be there for approximately this long, and these are the things that we're going to get. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Yeah, you're speaking the language. Let them know what's going on, because as my pediatrician said, how would you feel stuck in the back seat, in a car seat all day, not knowing how long you're going to be there, who you're going to have to deal with, how many different places you're going to have to go? Inform them, because then they'll pace themselves. Okay? Talk to your kids where they're at. Remember that tomorrow's a new day, and it'll be okay. Because again, we're trying to get that stress level down to where you're like, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. And I matter, and my kid matters, and my significant other matters, my whole family matters, and we just all gotta remember that. Communication. Communication is the root of every problem and is the solution to every issue. Clear, calm communication. And if you have to write it down and come back and talk to it later, that's okay. You don't have to say everything right when it goes through your brain. It's okay to have silence. It's okay to put your kid in the room and say, mom's gonna go take a time, mom or dad's gonna go take a time out, or bath, or whatever. Of course, this is relevant to safety and all that stuff, right? It's funny, I was just talking to someone about, when you have littles and they start walking, I'm like, kick them. Just because as soon as they start walking, your life is over as you knew it. You're entering a whole new chapter and you don't even know what's gonna happen. And they look at me like I'm awful, and I'm like, I'm just telling you, you can't take a shower, like knowing that your kid's gonna show up and be in the same place when you left them anymore. Communication, super important. By the way, if you have more than one kiddo, I grant each of you permission to be the parent for each kiddo. You do not need to be the same parent for all your kids. Does that make sense to everybody? We somehow, like, as a society, we're taught that you've got to be the same. Well, guess what? Ryan and Tyler are radically different human beings, and I have to parent them radically different. Ryan, when he was little and get the spins, the only way to get him out of it was a physical, I would flick his ear or pump his, pat his butt. I think Tyler got spanked 3 times in his life. Radically different kids. And I said to my pediatrician, oh my God, I'm like spanking my kid. And she knew Ryan from the day he was born. She's like, this is what gets him out of his cycle, his spins. This is what you need to do. Now, as a teenager, I don't get to spank his butt anymore. So we had to learn, right? But meet them where they're at. Kids feel safe with 5 needs. This is from Equinox. Safety and security. If they feel safe and secure, you're meeting one of their 5 needs. That they have power over their own voice. Hear them. And if you can't hear them when they're trying to communicate, tell them, I can't hear you right now. I'll come back to it. I promise I'm going to hear you. They have fun, because that's what kids are supposed to do, have fun. And we as parents get to have fun again. Like, no matter what childhood you had. If your kid's having fun, how many times do you smile watching your kid have fun? Right? So help them have fun. Freedom. They get choices. I happen to have a childhood where I didn't get any choice on my clothes or my shoes. So my kids got to pick everything that they ever wore. And what's funny is Tyler said to me about 6 months ago, I can't believe you let me do that. Okay, good. Freedom. Whatever freedom means for your kid, let them have that freedom. And that they feel loved and that they belong. And that, to me, is our job as parents or caregivers to provide that. But those are the 5 needs that every person, but specifically our kiddos, need to feel safe. By the way, if it wasn't obvious, kids with autism become adults with autism, but with more tools. So our job as parents and caregivers is to give them as many tools. Things like, hi, my name is Dawn. Nice to meet you. Ryan, when he meets somebody new, that's what he does. Because I decided in my profession, I really hated walking up to people and I got, here, hi. That's BS. So my kid knows how to have a good firm handshake, because that was important to me. Is it important in the real world? Depends on who meets. Spectrum is a spectrum. My favorite is when it doesn't look autistic. Seriously? Get over yourself. And that's an appropriate response. I'm sorry that he's not performing as appropriately for you. It doesn't change the fact that his brain works differently than mine or yours. That's your shortcoming, not his. Okay, here's where some science comes into play. If your kiddo has executive functioning challenges, again, if your kiddo has executive functioning challenges, and you know what that means, right? Like they need coaching all the time about, remember, we got to do this homework. We got to, you got to pace yourself on this project. Science, they just released a study, I think it was about 4 years ago, that showed that the executive functioning age of your kid is equivalent to 1/3 less their chronological age. So if you have a 21-year-old who would be a junior in college, probably, depending on the number of tools that they've had over the years, their executive functioning age is a 14-year-old or a freshman in high school. Okay? That's a big perspective shift. When you recognize that your kiddo is that far behind, now they'll catch up. My 52-year-old husband, he can fold clothes now and put them away, sometimes in the right place. That's the reality. That is a peer-reviewed science. We got enough data to say, here's a good guideline. So if you're working with your school on an IEP or a 504, and you know your kiddo has executive functioning challenges, advocate for them to understand for everybody that is in his or her team that their executive functioning age is significantly less than where they're at in school. Now, their brains might not be. Like learning the material, easy peasy. Turning in the homework, that's a different conversation. By the way, can't use that example. How you ask questions matter. Black and white. A black and white response is different than a shaded response or a shaded question. I have an example, but I can't use it because of different ages of kids here. So, I will think about that in the background. But that executive functioning age was huge for me to understand. So Ryan went off to college. He refused to have his executive functioning coach his first semester, and he buried himself hard and deep in a hole. Our requirement was we had to bring back his executive functioning coach, who loves him. He buried himself, he unburied himself in a semester. So it's just a matter of, and by the way, that executive functioning coach can be a friend, it can be a tutor, it cannot be mom or dad. That's just my 2 cents, at least in my household, because mom doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Just saying. But if you have someone else who's got the patience and they don't have the emotional attachment to hang out with that kid at night, their patience is usually unlimited, and they've found a way to communicate with your kiddo to help with that executive functioning skill. The other really interesting thing for Ryan that we went through is decision paralysis. Does anyone know what I'm talking about there? Is this ringing a bell with anybody? Decision paralysis. Yeah, decision paralysis. Ryan, you need to eat this protein bar. By the way, he was hangry every 3 hours. So I had to keep the clock. Everybody knows what hangry means, right? Yes, everybody knows what hangry means. So I was the keeper of the snacks, and I was the one going, okay, it's time to have a snack now. I don't want one. Well, Ryan, either you eat the snack or we don't go do this really fun activity right now. Which would you like to do? And he legitimately would freeze up and couldn't decide. He really wanted to go do the thing, but I made it a decision, which was my misgiving, because he had decision paralysis until probably about 16. So just to be aware of that, that is real. If you're like, why can't my kid make a decision? They actually just showed that people who have ADHD can get into decision paralysis. Like they don't want to upset people, or they don't know which logically versus feelings, and they could get paralyzed by making decisions. So that's a neurodivergent trait that goes across many of them, just to be aware. Okay, any questions? Yes?
I was going to say, so then what can you do in that situation when you know that they're going to probably not have a good time doing the activity because they are hangry? and you know that they need to eat something, what do you do in those situations?
I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
This is really, so if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't have made it a choice for him.
Okay.
I would have said, listen, we need to eat. I'm going to eat some. You're going to eat some. We're going to wait 5 minutes. We're going to see where we're at. And then we went from there. We learned we cannot go out to eat on Friday nights in my family. Friday nights are just bad. We're done. By the way, our kiddos are holding it together as best they possibly can all day, and then they come home and they're like, so by Friday, they're done. That's one of the things that we learned in our house. Just we can't go out to eat on Friday night. Saturday night, perfectly fine. Sunday afternoon, perfectly fine. Ryan loves water. I made the decision to take us to Waterworld for his birthday. It didn't work so well the first year. But I got to use it as an example of we're going to build up to have the stamina to stay longer next year. And then I got better about my snacks. And in that case, I was smart enough to say, we're going to hang out here until you eat the snack. And I'm going to sit with you until we eat the snack. And then we're going to go have fun. And we got, and now it's like, it's still a thing. Every summer we go to Waterworld. Okay, so those are the lessons. That's probably 20% of the lessons I've learned. Maybe some of them have resonated. Some of them you're like, oh, I'm glad I know that now. I hope so. Okay, tools that I've learned. And by the way, I'm trying to make sure there's enough time for questions. So if you got questions, I should have said that. If you have questions, I'm here to answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll point you in a direction that will teach you the answer. And also for you to have an opportunity to talk to these guys. Tools. Identify triggers. Because if you can identify triggers, you can avoid them. And that's good for everyone. And if you can't remember, write them down. Stick them on a sticky in your mirror in your bathroom so that your kid doesn't see them. But you are like, this happens. I know that this is going to happen. Because we get to be the adults in these situations. So identifying the triggers. My example there is the circus versus the video games. No circus. In my house, anyway. Okay, so on Equinox, I remember parent coaching. Our coach said, our therapist said, the Lissy family needs a feelings chart. I'm sorry, what? The Lissy family needs a feelings chart. I'm going to send you one. You're going to print it off, and you guys are going to practice identifying feelings. Did I mention I'm an engineer, and I live with 2 autistic people and a kiddo who knows more than everybody else in the world? We don't do feelings. And she was like, yeah, how's that working out for you? That was a really cold, hard smack. So I promptly printed the feelings chart. And we started talking about having more feelings than just anger. And specifically identifying, so like the thing that I did was I read them stories every night. By the way, I'm super excited that the Pout Pout Fish is coming out in a movie form. I can recite the whole thing. We're going to get it printed. Don't say anything over there. We're going to get it printed and framed for Tyler because I did all the voices and all that stuff. But every night I'd say, tell me 3 things that made you happy today. And that was how we got to figuring out emotions. What brings you joy? So tell Mama 3 things that made you happy today. Was there anything that made you sad today? Was there anything that made you mad today? Oh yeah, what'd you do about it? Okay, maybe that's not the best way to handle that. Here are some other ways that we could handle that. Right? Were you frustrated? Did you laugh? And this is really good for the adults in the room too. For those of us who might have gone through life without identifying their feelings, it's a really good exercise for you too. Hey, Mama, let Mama tell you about this funny story that happened today. And then they giggle because Mom's silly, you know. But feelings chart. I strongly suggest you, and now there are like very, very simple ones to very complicated ones. Print it out. Talk about it. It's cathartic for both you and your kids. And we might have a generation of kids that actually can identify and work through their feelings. That would be a novel concept. One of the things I'd say, you know, and I said, have gratitude every day. This goes for you too. Listen, I make it a practice every night before I go to bed to think of 3 things that I'm really, really grateful for today. Some days it was I took my dog for a walk. Those were those kind of days. Today, one of my things that I'm really grateful for is the opportunity to speak to you guys. Because again, if you walk out of here knowing you're not by yourself, that freaking matters to me. So have your kid practice 3 things that they're grateful for that day. And your neurons, by the way, this is science. When you start thinking positive thoughts, you change the transmission of negative to positive. And so that not everything is, again, lower, we're trying to find ways to lower the stress. Having gratitude is an easy way to lower your stress level. Equinox had us start doing Sunday family meetings. What happened this week? What's going on next week? What does everybody need? It's that extension of like getting them in the car for the day, but everybody being on the same page of having an opportunity to have a say, have their freedom, have their voice being heard. So Sunday family meetings are a big deal. And it could be 5 minutes, or if something heavy happened, by the way, we have a lot of heavy news, right? In our social media and the news cycle and everything else. Having a Sunday meeting where people can come and say, I want to talk about this. And like we had a whiteboard and people could put what they wanted on the agenda. And we talked about it. So that's another tool that we used. Parent coaching. How many of us are breaking a life cycle in their family and they're really proud of themselves but forget to acknowledge themselves? That would be me. And everybody that's raising their hand or not raising their hand, you know this is true. Congratulations to you. That stuff is hard. And by the way, I normally swear like a sailor, so I'm really proud of myself right now. That's from engineering school. Depending on where your kid's at, what their executive functioning level's at, what their emotional level's at, what they're capable of, work on 1 or 2 life skills at a time. You do not need to teach your kid every single thing every single day. So like, we practice how do you measure your feet to get new shoes. That's a life skill. Shaking someone's hand and introducing yourself and looking them in the eyes. That's a life skill. Having handwriting that someone else can read might be a life skill. I would have said cursive was a life skill, but it's not a life skill anymore. But pick your life skills. By the way, I don't care what my kids wear. They come up with new creative ways. So to me, matching clothes is not a life skill. But to you, it might be. That's okay. Pick and choose, practice it, check it off, move on to the next one. Pick and choose your battles, by the way. I'm sure everybody had a grandma that said that. Pick and choose your battles. She wasn't wrong. This is where I bring in Cher and Cher's advice. Is it going to matter in 5 years? No, then it doesn't matter today. So if you're like going to pick a fight, and by the way, in the Lissy household, everybody has to have the last word. Everybody. We can have long nights with everybody wanting to have the last word. So I was the one that had to go, okay, it's not going to matter in 5 years, so I'm gonna walk away from this one. When Ryan went into middle school, I looked at Chris. We had Weimaraners when the kids were born that were older from when we moved from Ohio to Colorado. We moved here 21 years ago. So they didn't remember those dogs. And so we lived for years without a dog. And when Ryan went into middle school, and I was like, this kid needs a therapy dog. We got an Irish Wolfhound. I will tell you we got an Irish Wolfhound because, first of all, they need 10 minutes of exercise in the morning, 10 minutes of exercise in the evening, and then they play dead for the whole rest of the day. They're 125 pounds to 150 pounds, and by the way, boys can come and hug them, and they don't care. And boys can come take their bones out of their mouth while they're mid-chew, and they don't care. My point here is Fiona was Ryan's therapy dog and helped him get through a loss of a grandparent, transition to middle school, dealing with bullies. If your family can have a therapy dog, cat, guinea pig, fish, something that they can again, part of those 5 skills where they are giving care, try and do it. And again, it could be an imaginary pet. But I will tell you that in our house, and by the way, Fiona's cousin, if you're like wondering what the heck happened to her, Harlequin, she and I were having an argument about how much grass she was supposed to be eating or not eating, and I pulled her up short, and she jumped into me, and I nosedived into the ground. So, you know, there's some pros and cons, but Irish Wolfhounds are, they're gentle giants, so that's my plug for that. Let's see, do your homework. So, what was it Mark Twain that said? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. I think that was the quote. Do your homework. You know your kid better than anybody. So if you go to a medical practitioner and they tell you this, and you're like, no, my kid's over here, listen to yourself. You know your kid better than anyone else. And by the way, as someone who has worked and lived and been breathing in the medical industry, I'm the person that all of my family and friends take for orthopedic care because I'm the one that says, well, how many adverse events did you have? How many times have you done the surgery? Why should they do this? And they're like, who are you? I'm your worst nightmare, buddy. If you don't like the answer, if it's not sitting, like you squarely know the answer's over here, but you don't know what it's called or you don't know what the tools are, keep going. Find another practitioner. Do not settle for this. You know your kid better than anybody else. Advocate for your kid. Go be a pain in the ass at the school if you need to be. Call those quarterly meetings and yearly meetings that they're supposed to be having. I know that the teaching system is strained, and I'm really sorry that that's in that situation, but that's not your fault or your problem. Your job, your duty is to make sure that your kid is being taken care of to the best of everybody's ability. Advocate for your kid. Ask questions. By the way, if you've heard the research study that said autism is caused by vaccinations, this is not a political discussion. I'm just going to, again, science brain over here, do my research. The guy who published that study came out 10 years later and said that he lied. He, in a court of law, said he lied. There is still a part of the population that believes that that's the cause of all this. I'm going to tell you it's genetics. It's genetics. The highest concentration of neurodivergent humans in our country is Silicon Valley. You know why? Because they recruited a whole bunch of really smart people who perseverate on problems and solve problems, and then they got married and had babies. And if you are neurodivergent, you have a 50% chance of your kid being neurodivergent. If you have one kiddo that's neurodivergent, of any of the 8 neurodivergents, by the way, and probably they have more than one, or touches of the others, if you have one kiddo that's neurodivergent, you have a 75% chance of having a second kid with neurodivergent. It's genetics. So Tyler says to me, like, last spring, at the end of the school year, Mom! Yeah, Tyler? I've got like 6,000 things going on in my brain right now. Drink some caffeine. Huh? Drink some caffeine. Why would I do that? So that your brain calms down. How do you know that? Genetics, science, experience. Those of you who don't know, if you're wondering if you or a kiddo might have some ADHD, the easiest, fastest way is to give them pure caffeine. No sugar. Sugar will offset the whole point of the caffeine. Give them pure caffeine, whether it's a shot of espresso, God help you. But there's lots of, like, you can give them Celsius green tea, right? And if they calm down, like their brain, like you can see them going from to there's an 80+% chance your kiddo or you are on the ADHD platform, okay? Because caffeine calms the brain down when it's going. So half an hour later, he comes back and he's like, I have like 6 tabs open. How'd you know that? Superpower. What's interesting is that when we got Ryan's diagnosis, my mother-in-law was like, this is Gus's fault. Gus was her ex-husband that was dead for 10 years. I'm like, can we not pick on the dead guy? She and I went to a conference that they had that year down here in Temple Grand and came and spoke. And it was funny because we're sitting there and the whole time she's like, huh, I do that. Huh, I do that. Huh. I'm like, yeah, you're all whacked. I love my mother-in-law. She's awesome. But it's really funny things like you start buying clothes without tags in them because clothes makers have finally got to the point where they actually print clothes with the tag printed on the back so that I don't have to cut the tags off of everything. Those are things that we do when we figure out the triggers. Closed sensory thing was definitely a thing in my house. But genetics is real. Science is real. Go read the article from the New York Times guy to understand how we got to this explosion. It is 1 in 36 kids that are diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder. 6.1 million children in the United States are affected by ADHD. 1 in 62 are diagnosed with Tourette's. So that is, I mean, if you think about that, 1 out of 5 classrooms in any grade has someone who has Tourette's. It is currently estimated that 15 to 20% of the population has some form of neurodivergence. That is 1 out of every 5 people. And this will be the only political statement I make tonight. Do not listen to the guy who's in charge of our healthcare system. Just don't listen to him. Turn off the news. Anything that comes out of that man's mouth is doing damage to our community and doing damage to the medical community. That is my political statement for tonight. But understand, know your facts, do your research, understand what works for your kid, advocate for your kid, understand that tomorrow's going to be a different day. Today might have been a rough day. Still find 3 things that you're grateful for, even if it was you took a shower that day. And for some parents, that's a big win that day. Teach your kids to have gratitude. Drop the baton. Know that there are resources out there. Equine therapy was a huge one for Ryan. He freaking loved it. He came home happy. He learned how to trot and to gallop and all the things. And we have some great equine therapy programs here. Chiropractic care, they're able to show with science, you can calm down your nervous system. And if you can calm down your nervous system, you can stay regulated. And you're not in pain, or you don't have like, and kids don't, I always joke that like 3-year-olds are, whoever said terrible 2s, they were lying. That's my experience. 2 was easy. 3 was the one where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this year. And I thought I was a horrible parent. And my friends were like, how old is he? And I'm like, 3. They're like, yeah, just wait until he turns 4. Huh? No, it's 3. Because they can start to communicate what they want, but they don't have enough tools to communicate exactly what they want. So their frustration level is through the roof, and guess who gets to be the punching bag? We as parents. By the way, we get to be the punching bag again, in my opinion, in teenage years. I don't recommend it. Okay. Music. Music is huge. You know why? Because it makes you use another part of your brain than talking. Science has shown that if you write something, say something, or sing something, it uses all the different parts of your brain to engage. All right, that's all I have in my presentation. What questions do you guys have for me, if any? Yes?
How do you tell the difference between regular behavioral issues that every kid has versus an ADHD meltdown that you should parent calmly in a different way versus you're just being stubborn? We need to get through this.
What I'm going to tell you is talk to your friends that have kids the same age or kids that are the same emotional age as your kid and find out what their kids are doing. That was the only way I could tell, this is something that all the kids do, or this is something that's unique to me. It's correlation,
Age comparison?
They have chore charts per age, that if your kid is this age, they should be able to do these chores. So that way you know like what they have.
Yeah. Assume that it's your kiddo and it's a special opportunity until you have other information to make a different decision the next time. But I'll be honest with you, it wasn't until I'd go have lunch or dinner with friends that had kids that were in the same grade that I'd say, oh, so what's going on with your kid these days? And then they would go, bleh, and I'd be like, okay, no, my kid's not, yeah, he's doing, oh. And then I like made the mental file and went, okay, this is what kids this age do. All right, we'll just deal with that. Okay, this is my special deck of cards I get to deal with. Okay, this is how we're going to deal with it. But regardless, throw down the baton. Because if you're deregulated, it doesn't matter what, you're neurotypical, all the cards or none of the cards. What other questions you guys have? Was this helpful?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. That makes me happy.
Any thoughts on how to break out of, like if they're so focused on one topic, or they're doing something, or they're talking and they won't stop talking, like they're trying to get it all out, they're trying to, like, will they ever learn balance? Will they ever stop? Will they ever, like, how do you break that a little bit, or get them to adjust a little bit, or is that something you just keep going with because it's like your superpower?
Oh God, no. Okay, so here's my suggestion. Can I ask how old the kiddo is?
12-year-old.
Okay. So first of all, you're going to be grateful for that they talk to you. You're great, maybe right now, but there will come a day. I'm telling you, as the young adults. By the way, young adults are the hardest, as far as I'm concerned, of all of the stages. You're going to be grateful that they're talking to you. So keep fostering. Breathe. Put your poker face on if you have to. In a family meeting, say, hey, we're going to practice letting other people talk, and you're going to listen. And then you do like a little experiment. Dad or brother or sister or me, hey, can you talk about this? So, and then you're to the kiddo that you're talking about, I want you to listen so that you can ask one question.
Because what's going on outside of that? To get them to just be aware of what...
Absolutely.
Then they have to ask.
But that's also a form of perseveration, by the way. So sometimes you're just going to have to let it go. But there's ways to, like, not in the moment, because if you're trying to do it in the moment, you're just going to upset the person. But like at a Sunday family meeting where everybody knows that they're going to have to show up and pay attention, have an example. Hey, we're going to practice listening to others in our family so we can hear what's going on in their life. What's upsetting them or what's making them happy. And I want everybody, and I would do it as every person at the table has to ask a question of what that person said. So we're not singling that one kiddo out. Does that make sense? So make it like everybody is learning. Because they don't want to feel like, I mean, Ryan would often say, I feel like you spend so much energy on me, Mom, or I feel like I'm the weird kid, or I'm failing, right? And we don't want that either. We want them to have positive skills. So just flip your script and take the opportunities to, or if you're in the middle and you're like, dude, I can't do this right now, then you're going to say, psst, or tell everybody in the family meeting, this is the timeout symbol. If Mom says this, I get 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back. And then you go do your timeout. That's what I would do.
Because it's hard to... Oh! The interruption is just incessant every week. Because their brain, they have so much going on in their brain. They're this subject, this subject, this subject,
and they're holding it together all day to come bark at you. That's what he's doing. He is doing his best to hold it together. And then I would say, I love hearing you talk. Thank you for sharing all this with me. Mom needs 5 minutes. And we're going to go over here, and then I'll come back. And then you're going to go, you know, but so whatever's appropriate. If you can poker face it, poker face it. If you need to time out, you time out. But then also use that as an opportunity to teach them some life skills around, we got to listen to other people too. Mm-hmm. Yes?
The decision paralysis.
Yeah.
I experienced that hardcore
with
my children. One of them terrifies me because I was terrified for him to learn to drive because he can't make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And those, I can't be with him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
have you ever found a successful way of like guiding them through that into making a decision, or?
I mean, besides praying for your guardian angels to watch after that kid as they're driving? Yeah, I do that on a regular basis. I'm just going to tell you that.
Don, can you repeat the question?
Yes, the question was around decision paralysis. How do you navigate that? Specifically, she has a child that is driving or learning to drive, and she can't be with them for every decision. So how do you navigate that? So my commentary there is, first of all, pay homage to your guardian angels. For Ryan, we didn't push driving on him because as soon as he was engaged in something, he nails it. So as soon as he was interested in driving, his decision paralysis went away. So if your kiddo wants to drive, they're going to show up in a different way than if you're pushing them to drive.
Yeah, he wanted to, and he's got his license now. It still kind of terrifies me that he's on the road sometimes.
Oh,
but it was like, yeah, he failed the driving permit test 3 times because of that decision stuff. And I'm just like, wow, you know the information.
So, if you can, this is sometimes where therapy will help, because if you can find the root cause of why he's having that decision paralysis, then he can figure out, like for Ryan, we had a code word. Like if he was starting to spin because of decision paralysis, at one point we had a code word that said, I think it was purple. It was like a dumb word. But that was a trigger in his brain that said, oh, here's where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to breathe. And like, we had this whole reset thing. By the way, how many people have heard of your vagus nerve? Okay, that will amp your anxiety up, right? We all have been anxious. If you tap here, it will calm your vagus nerve down. That might be a tool. If you do this, it's known to actually reset your brain. So if you have, so the crisscross across your body brain. So if you give him some tools and a code word that you say, here's your, if that's when you're there, right? But if you can start making him aware of it, and that's how Ryan grew out of it, was we started making him aware of it as opposed to accommodating that decision paralysis. So if you give him the tools to calm himself down, to be aware of it, and then, here's the other thing, share. Is it going to matter in 5 years? No. Then make the decision that matters. Simple, silly things like that. And then find the things that work in your family, but that's basically the framework that I would recommend. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
You mentioned that you have a twice exceptional. Yeah, sorry. You mentioned that you have a twice exceptional. When you were getting them set up with whatever, IEP, 504, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How do you get them to listen to you? Mine is twice exceptional and he's too smart for his own good. He's 6 and he does like multiplication and division and like he's way above what he should be. So they're pretending like the ADHD isn't there. Mm-hmm. And it's causing problems for other kids.
Yep.
They won't listen.
So we had a wiggle seat for Ryan.
Okay.
You can buy those little seats where he can wiggle in his chair, and so that he can move his body. Because again, for the kiddos with ADHD, if you can move their body, I'm not a big fan of medication. I am a big fan of medication when it matters, right? So like we did different things, there's again, caffeine will calm the ADHD brain down. So you can find supplements that I like Celsius tea because it's green tea that's you drink it, but it stays in your system over 8 hours slowly, right? So you got a little bit the whole time. But then it's also widgets.
The school provides them. I guess my question is, how do I get school to listen? Because he participates somewhat, but anytime I bring anything to their attention, or they bring something to my attention, like we did this today, well, it's like in this 504, why didn't you do what you have set up?
Yeah.
And it's like they're just skipping the ADHD because it's smart. Like that,
you can be more. So what you need to say is you can be more than one thing at one time. How do we work together? Because if you go in swinging, they're going to come back swinging. Because we're all human, right? If you go in angry and frustrated, which there's a time and a place to be angry, don't get me wrong, because this mama bear, man, don't screw with this mama bear. And I'm sure all of you guys are like that. But it's more of, hey, how can we work together here? And you come up collectively as a team with solutions. And by the way, he'll get to the age where he'll be able to give input too. Listen to him. That's part of him having a voice. Or even ask him at 6, what do you need, buddy, for you to be able to pay attention? Or he might actually have solutions for you. I mean, we had kiddos that they're like, nobody asked me. I was like, well, that was an oversight on all of our parts. Yes?
Being bioengineering.
Yeah.
How close or how far are we from finding options? Can it be done engineered, or is it just something that, like rewiring your brain or whatever, is there anything, studies or anything that correlate with that?
Part of the answer would be another political answer, so I'll just keep that out of it. So there are constantly research, like there was a study, I want to say, it was right around COVID, so either right before or right after COVID, where we know that our gut is our second brain, right? So food actually has an impact, right? Well, I have a kiddo who loves carbs. And by the way, he loved long, skinny carbs, think French fries, pretzel rods, things like that, because he had tonsils that were so big that he couldn't chew anything else. Talk about who was the failure of a mom that year, okay? But food matters. High protein. High protein is really good. Complex carbohydrates are really good because it's natural sugar for your body. You need fat, carbs, and protein. But there was a study where they took healthy flora from the intestine and transplanted it to others, and like some of the really severe autism symptoms calmed down. I'll be honest with you, I don't know where that study is at now. But I do know that there are people that are out there trying to find ways for people to navigate. But I'm also going to tell you genetics are genetics. So there's that too. But we can navigate some of the, nonverbal is hard, right? That's exhausting on so many levels. But there are things that people are doing. There is science out there. So when I said earlier, do your research, that matters.
Well, that's why I'm thinking, because most of the things that we talk about is like mental exercises or mental things to do, but actual physical.
Yeah.
Like, let's say chiropractic or something, is there like pressure points or anything like that can...
Yeah, your vagus nerve, if you're anxious, have breathing techniques, meditation, sound baths, all those things, again, it depends on what the person's sensory reception is. Those things will all make a difference. What you eat makes a difference. Now, every kiddo is a picky eater, so you're going to navigate that. But if you can get, Ryan ate green lime soy yogurt for 8 years every day. That was his thing. But it got 20 grams of protein in him first thing in the morning. And that made all the difference in the world. I'm just going to say that high protein, complex carbs. Yes.
I saw this article about how autism is, it could be that umbilical cord fats were too much. I don't know what that meant. Is that true?
That's the first I've heard of that one.
Okay, that was a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm still going to go with genetics. We have enough science on genetics that X and Y and XX and So I'm just going to say that. But I hadn't heard of that one. I'm happy to go look it up. Yes?
I have a question. So I have a nonverbal autistic child, and one of the things that I'm struggling with is seeing his progress in the IEP program.
Yeah.
I worry that since he can't talk and he's using the speech device, that the school isn't really applying it in the school. What are ways that I can kind of be nosy and be like, hey, is this actually happening? Because at home, he's doing great because we have a speech therapist, but in the school, I can't see his progress on that device or anything. What are ways that I could be a little bit more involved in that aspect there?
So my suggestion would be so this is my engineering brain, so this is all I'm going to just dump on you. If this were my deck of cards, how I would do it is I would start printing out pictures and like pictures of things that he's experiencing in his life, and ask him, did you do this today? So like, did he play on the playground? So have a picture of kids playing on the playground.
Okay.
Did you sing songs today? So find out what the curriculum is, create pictures, and then ask him, what did you do today?
Okay.
Did you sit with a person that helped you today? So like find a picture of a person sitting at a desk with a kiddo and ask him, did this happen today?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, my brain that's how it works. Yes?
So you mentioned executive function.
My old ears.
Executive function coaching?
Yeah.
For my son, that's something I understood that we are, knowing that more of a publisher and stuff, that's very, pipe dream, or never.
That's not true.
Do a lot of these things, and I know that's kind of like your whole thing, so that's what I'm interested in, is that like a pamphlet?
So I just learned about a group that focuses on executive functioning coaching. So Tim, who has the parent coaching flyer over there, he was the one that was telling me, he's like, you need to connect with these people. So what I'm going to tell you is, I don't know who that resource is right now. I haven't vetted that. How NeuroAlly works, so thank you for this opportunity. How NeuroAlly works is that you can go as a family to the website, and right now there's 2 separate applications. We're going to narrow it down to 1 application, and we're coming out with chapter 2 of NeuroAlly, so have a little patience with us, please. Because running a business for profit is radically different than running a nonprofit, and so I'm learning all those lessons. But you can, as a family, download the application, fill it out. These are the services that we're looking for. And then we as NeuroAlly, and if you have someone, like you say, hey, this is the group, then we'll get that group to fill out an application as a service provider. I have a third-party committee that reviews the family application and the need, as well as all the service providers. Are they in alignment with the full family care program, right? So what I mean by that is, we don't provide services or funding for ABA therapy, because that's the only thing that's actually covered by insurance, and there's a ton of them. So we don't do that. We're going for things like chiropractic care, or executive functioning, or parent coaching, or testing. Testing services is one of the things that we support, right? And our testing services, at about $4,500 a pop, are the ones that come with the plans, because that's what I learned, is that like, people just get, oh, your kid is this, good luck. I'm like, that's complete and utter BS. Sorry, parents. I'm still proud of myself here, guys. So the group that we work with gives a full comprehensive, here's tools that you can use for your kiddo with your deck of cards. Here's things that you can take to this school. So you can apply to NeuroAlly and say, my kiddo needs this and here's why. And then we'll go get the provider and help you. And now that I know that there's a provider, that's one of the services that can be covered. Awesome. Again, thank you for being one of my awesome things today. Thank you.
It was very informative. There was lots of great information. One of my favorite things was just the example of the different things under the neurodivergent umbrella, because I think, you might not realize all the things. So I feel like I struggle with dyslexia, so I'm like, I need to research that, so very good. And I also love how you gave real life examples and things that people could really take into their day-to-day life. I think sometimes when you hear all this information, you're like, well, what can I do next? So thank you for that, it was very informative. So families, let's give Dawn another big